everybody. Last Sunday, I gave a short update on some of our building plans, particularly as it related to the delay with APS. And that brought up some questions about that aspect, as well as some other aspects of the building construction plans. And so I just wanted to take a few minutes today and give you some more information, maybe answer some of the recurring questions that I'm hearing. And just fair warning, this update is probably going to take a little bit longer than most of them that I put out. One question that came up was, why are we facing delays with APS? Well, if you remember back to the beginning of construction, we were delayed on power and water from almost the beginning because of the 10-foot right-of-way that Glendale City wanted on all of the property along Litchfield Road. So that took months to work out, but finally, after it was worked out, then we were able to move ahead with plans with Liberty Water and plans with APS, which, by the way, water should be hooked up in the next week or so, so we're making great progress there. APS created an original plan for us to run power from Bethany Home Road down to our property. It's about a quarter-mile run. And about the time they finished that plan and were ready to act on it, there was a buyer that bought the piece of property on the southwest corner of Bethany Home and Litchfield Road. And he applied for power also. So that forced them to go in and revise the plans and figure out how the switch boxes and power wire and all that was going to run through. And on top of that, the landowner was kind of convinced that he wasn't going to have APS run power from that particular location, and that he didn't have to follow the setback rules from Glendale. So it's taken some time to get him on the same page. I think we're probably pretty close to it being there now. And so now we're just kind of waiting on APS to finish their redraw, and then for us to be able to know exactly where we're digging at the end of the run and have them run the power back to our property. That whole delay has also kept us from being able to lay our flooring because the rooms have to be temperature controlled before we can lay down the epoxy and the laminate flooring. And so we're going to have to wait. We have a generator that produces power for lights and maybe a air conditioner or two, but not enough to temperature control both of the buildings. And if we were to rent a generator that was big enough to do that, it would be a significant cost. And so we've just decided to wait until we have permanent power to be able to do the flooring. That can happen pretty quickly once the power's in, and we'll be able to get into the buildings. One positive thing that's come out of the APS delay is that this new landowner will probably have to bear the cost of running power across his property. And so that potentially is going to lessen the cost and the length of the run that we're going to have to accomplish. Another question that's been asked is, why are there water leaks in the foyer and in the gym, and why weren't they addressed sooner? Well, there are 3 companies that have had a part in the roof issues, and each of them kind of pointing the finger, insisting that it was the other person's responsibility. So Jerry Patton brought in a roofing inspector and said, let's try to get to the bottom of this. And basically, as you might expect, all 3 of them have some play in the fixes that need to take place. And so they've all agreed to the areas that they're fixing and the way that they're doing it, and that should be accomplished in the next week to 2 weeks. Now, the positive aspect from that issue has been we had good heavy rains that have come that have revealed the leaks that we might not have ever known anything about. And so we can have those fixed before we take occupancy, which I think is a great win. And besides one spot in the foyer, there hasn't been very much damage take place from the leaks that have been in there. Next, those of you who follow the pictures posted on the Facebook TL Sears page have seen Dave Wasmer working in our foyer and doing some drywall work, which has been awesome. But the question has come up is, why is Dave doing work that other contractors should be doing? Well, besides one task that we did ask him to do, and that was to get up into the ceiling of the foyer and see if he could locate where the leak was coming from. Otherwise, everything that he's done are areas that we knew we were going to have to hire a different contractor for, but Dave was willing to do it and do it practically at no cost. And it's been a joy to have him in there and see his smiling face and seeing him work and dreaming about all the possibilities of those new buildings. So we are so appreciative of what Dave has accomplished for us. A few weeks ago, I went out on a limb to say that we could potentially be occupying our buildings in October. And the question arises now, is that timeline still on track? And the answer is probably not. It's probably going to be into November before we're able to occupy the buildings. So that brings up the question, well, what about 31st Extreme? Jerry Patton tells us that we should be able to do a one-time outdoor event on our property before we have occupancy. He's checking with the county on any permits that we would need to have for that, but we are still believing that we can hold 31st Extreme on our property whether or not we have occupancy of the buildings. The plus side to this is that 31st Extreme and the follow-up to 31st Extreme could be a great invitation to our grand opening service that we would hold in November. The last question I want to address is where we are financially. And we'll have an update next week from Jerry on our construction budget. However, though most of our contingency money has been used for unexpected items, which is why we have contingency money, change orders and delays and price increases on materials are all things that contingency money has gone to, and that's what we expected. Even though we've spent the contingency money, we still are within our overall budget for construction, which I feel pretty good about considering COVID and the way costs have increased so much. I think we're still in pretty good shape. And so that tells us then that the money that we've been raising from January until now is money that will be able to go toward our FF&E costs, which is furniture and equipment that's going to go into the buildings that we'll be able to use when the building is opened up. And so I'm feeling pretty good about that whole idea of where we are financially. We are dipping into our loan now. We have taken some draws from the loan as we expected would probably have to happen, but we're still trusting God that He's going to provide all along the way for every need that we have. And so as we're getting close to completing our building project, I just want to commit to you that I'm going to give you weekly updates between now and our grand opening service. There's so much happening now. I think it's important that I communicate better and that you have more information so that you can tell others and you can feel comfortable with the process. So sometimes when I do an update, I may be answering questions that you didn't really even have or hadn't thought to ask, but then you have questions that you would like answered. So on this email that you received with this video on it, in the description is a link that you can click on and you can ask any question you want to about our building process on there. I'll take those questions and answer them in my next update and make sure that all of the questions are addressed. I mentioned in my sermon last Sunday that the Apostle Peter says that to God, one day is like 1,000 years and 1,000 years is like a day. That doesn't mean that it's going to take thousands of years to finish our building project, but what it does remind us of is that God's timing is different than ours. That God has so many other things in play that we don't understand or know about, that it would be tough for us to expect God to fit into our timeline. It's our call to fit into God's timeline. And so I have great trust and faith that God is going to finish this project as we are faithful to do the things He calls us to do, and that it'll be the most perfect timing we could have ever imagined. And so I want to thank all of you for just walking on this journey with me. It's really been very exciting to be a part of this whole process. Stressful at times, yes, but also just very infilling and fun to be able to manage this and to see God move and to see how God is working in your lives through it all. And so I'm just grateful that you've been with me, that you're praying, that you're giving financially, and that you're allowing God to grow you and teach His ways to you in this process. Continue to pray for us. Continue to ask God to move in His perfect timing and to offer His great provisions to us as He sees fit. Thanks for your time today.